Hello and welcome to In Service to Transformation with me, your host, Claire Darnell. And this week I'm going to meet with Hannah Jardine Youell. Hannah is a hypnotherapist, a coach, speaker, and advocate who works with charity, specifically with families, and has a lot of magic to bring to this chat in terms of how she marries all of these worlds together. I met Hannah through a women's circle where she had been asked to share an impromptu meditation and visualization, and it was really beautiful and very impactful to the women in the circle. So we stayed in connection and she's become a friend, and I'm really excited to learn more about her through this chat. So welcome, Hannah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this, since we booked it in.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So I'm really keen to learn a little bit more about you and your journey. And I always start with this question and then we unravel from here. And it's kind of a question around, the topic of the podcast is what does it mean to be in service to transformation of self and others? And so we all have that moment, or we may have a period of time in our lives that leads us to a place of accessing healing or searching for healing. Is there something that you can pull to mind that where that existed for you, where you came to think, oh, I need to change something, or something needs to grow, or what was it like for you?
Yeah, I totally I really enjoyed reflecting on this question actually, because it is like it's a journey, isn't it? It's a journey. There's different steps along the way, and it was very nice to kind of come back and look back and think, what was that one point? And there is a really, really clear point in time for me. But then from that point, I can see kind of ripples back into the past that were building towards it. And then obviously the ripples into the future. And it's only now from my standpoint that I can see that that was the kind of significant moment. So I guess I can start there.
Yeah.
Start. So it was in the year of everybody's probably big moment, which was 2020, but for different reasons actually. So that was the pandemic year, as we all are not allowed to forget, and I was pregnant with my third child. So I now have three boys who are all Earthside, and my youngest is about to turn 4. And I was pregnant with him. So I got pregnant with, his name is Rafi. I got pregnant with him, we'll say by surprise.
Yeah.
Rather than by accident, because it is it's a blessing. And it was just really poor timing. It was in the October of 2019. I just got this job that was like a dream job, but it was really intense. I didn't think I was going to get it. Got the job. 3 days later, found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
And it was a study, recruit to train. So there was a couple of days a week at uni, and there was like a postgraduate diploma to finish. Anyway, this is relevant because I was like, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to smash it out. I'm going to try and get as much of the course done before the baby comes. And then I'll go back after my maternity leave. And I started that job in January 2020, and it was working with children in schools around their kind of mental health. Brilliant course. And we started, it was great. I did all the theory. And then just around the time we were supposed to begin our practice and like fulfill our portfolios, and so that we could actually get our accreditation to be able to work, that was March 2020. And actually March 23rd is my birthday, which was the day they declared lockdown. I remember I got sent home from work. I wasn't allowed to work because I was pregnant, which was a very strange feeling. And yeah, lots of things happened as a result of that. So I found myself in 2020 for the first time ever feeling like I was not in, I don't know how to explain it actually. So I would say I would describe myself as a very average person. Like I'm an average height, shoe size is average clothes size. My medical history is like pretty textbook, and I've always done like all right at school. I lived a life of relative privilege compared to lots of people, I would say, and just kind of like bumbled along and had quite a nice time. And that's lovely. I've really enjoyed that. But in 2020, I was pregnant, which put you in a higher risk for COVID. I'm a mixed race person, that put you in a higher risk for COVID. And Black Lives Matter was really popping off around that time. And there's also, which I've been aware of, but it never hit like it did that year, the statistic that Black women and women from ethnic minority backgrounds are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth, really poor outcomes. And all of this noise was just being shouted at me from the world. And I'm not I'm not really a big worrier. There are a few things that will, there are a few things that might get in my head, but I don't tend to worry about stuff until it's imminent. And I don't tend to worry for very long. That's just, I think, my nature, really, my wiring. Bit of practice, but mostly wiring.
Yeah.
And I just had the whole world was just shouting like danger, danger, danger. And I was like nurturing this baby inside of me that I was really looking forward to birthing. And I think at that point I started to create like a bit of a bubble around myself and the baby, which is probably related to like hormones as well, and the fact that the world stopped. It was so warm and sunny. So it was a very strange time for me. And then I just really noticed all of that. And I felt actually disconnected in a way. I felt really connected to my family unit because my partner, he still had to go into work, but we were all home together. And I feel so lucky that we have like a small garden. We're already a little gang, I have my two boys were quite young then, and another one on the way. Have a nice, secure and healthy and happy relationship with my partner. So we were socially pretty well nourished.
Yes.
And I live in a lovely community. So I'd go on my one sanctioned walk. Sometimes I take two. And you bump into people, so I didn't feel that kind of lonely. But when the Black Lives Matter stuff kicked off and everyone was really cross, most of my friends are white actually. And I've got like, I would argue some of the best friends that you could possibly get. But I had a lot of people around me, and I guess on social media and things as well, who were very, very angry, and people who had not, I felt like I should be angry, or I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to process everything that was happening and how everybody suddenly woke up to like racism, because it really did feel like it wasn't bad yesterday and now it's bad today. And how can this be? And everyone was taking each other down on socials. Now I just thought like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Like, I know what's happened is wrong. And I know all this, there's so much harm that has been done for so long. And that's all wrong, but that's always been there. That's not new. And this kind of wave of anger made me feel a bit like, didn't know how to find my place in the world. So I was like, it was a really like swirly sort of time, I guess, when my identity got kind of liquidized a little bit, because I'm a very sociable person. I love my work, and all of those social events, going to work, having a role where I help people, all of those things are taken away from me. My feeling of being like a healthy person who was like safe, a lot of these things were kind of crumbling as well. And my connection to people that I would normally feel part of the group with, and I don't specifically mean my friends, I just mean in general, I'd never felt different. Although I am different, and I have been different, and I've been like the one of the only, or the only like brown people in a room for most of my life. But I grew up in a really lovely home, just me and my mum. My mum's white, my dad's black. I would step into my dad's family and be really part of that, and have people that look like me, but then also be really, really completely comfortable navigating white spaces. And it never really, that's what I mean about privilege for me. I've always felt like I can navigate both worlds really comfortably, and I will have experienced prejudice, but it's like I've not noticed it really. It's only on reflection that you think, oh, maybe that's why. So I'd never felt like I didn't fit in or felt different. And then I felt, oh yeah, all of these things made me not who I thought I was. And I felt like I can't speak. I haven't suffered enough to speak for the Black community. So I don't feel angry enough. And I don't know how, like, I've never been threatened by the police. I'm not worried about getting stopped in the street. I can't relate to this kind of suffering. And where do I, but I'm not as, just felt like I didn't fit anywhere.
Yes.
And then at the same time, having a really beautiful time with my family and just slowing right down. And then I guess the pivotal moment was Rafi's birth.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. So I had my other two babies in the, not in the hospital, in the birthing centre in the pool. And I planned to have a home birth with Rafi, because there were, I'd always wanted to, and because he was like a bonus baby.
Beautiful to advocate for that for yourself.
Exactly. I thought, let's just do it, because I'm not having any more babies. I wasn't even meant to have this one. So let's just go all out. And also there was a lot of talk about restrictions. It was very in a real state of flux, when they would let you in, when they would let your partner in, and what tests you might have to have, or if someone might have to like check how much progress you'd made. And I thought, you know what, I don't want any of that to interrupt my labor. I just want to have a nice birth as much as I can. I had two other really lovely births. So I agreed with my partner that we would have the baby at home. We got a birth pool. And I will summarize it because I could talk about it for ages. But it's
Not
it's
too much,
the best thing that's ever happened to me, honestly. I It happened within about 2 hours. There wasn't enough time to even finish inflating the birth pool, basically. Went upstairs while one of my then youngest was having a nap, so I thought I'll just go rest. And I went in our lovely, beautifully decorated spare room that had just been decorated. I got in there, went to lie down and was like, oh no, there's no sleeping that's going to happen. Like, I've got work to do.
You're in labour, yeah. Yeah.
And I had a fan, a hot water bottle, and I think I got my partner to bring me up some coconut water and a playlist. All I needed. And he was like, around looking after my eldest, trying to get the birth pool, trying to read the instructions, trying to inflate it. Probably, I'm sure I was like in a beautiful another world, and it was probably extremely stressful for those guys. So I'm very grateful, because it wouldn't have been the birth.
Protected, yeah.
And yeah, protected. My space was totally protected. I felt very safe. And I just went completely inwards, just like moving, dancing, just absolutely flowed with it. And it was so powerful. I remember like some of the surges like bringing me like from standing down to my knees. I remember them like rippling through my body, and I never, because I was completely unobserved. I'm a very socially aware person, and I want everybody who's around me to feel good. Like, that's my natural sort of inclination. Some people, I wouldn't call it people pleasing. I don't think that's right. It's not, that doesn't name it properly, but I'm just aware of the energy in a room, and like, how can I connect people, make people feel comfortable? It's just, I'm just naturally inclined that way. And so even in the most lovely, in my lovely other birth, lovely midwives, everyone was brilliant. There's a tiny little bit of my psyche that's like, oh, are you all right? Am I giving you good feedback? Are you worried about me? Like, have you got everything you need? Like, when does your shift finish? I'm not saying this, but my little
navigating everyone else's experience alongside your own, right?
Exactly that. So to be completely unobserved, I don't think I've ever gone that inwards before. It was such a trip. It was just incredible. Like, the actual labor was amazing. And then it all happened really quickly. My partner came up to say, oh, the labor line have phoned back. There's no midwives to come. No one can get here in time. You can go to hospital, which is like half an hour drive, or you can wait 2 hours and go to the birthing center. And as they said that, my waters broke. So they were like, hang up, dial 999. And then my then youngest woke up from his nap, wanted mum. It was just absolutely going off. And so my partner went to get my youngest up from his nap. I think my eldest was rubbing my back at one point, and then he went down to put a film on for them both, heard me shout. I was like, the head's out. And then he came running back upstairs and like caught Rafi's body as he was born.
Oh my God, I feel like I want to cry. This is amazing. Yeah.
So amazing. And like, what I need you and all of your listeners to know about me is that I'm, like I said at the beginning, I'm very, very average. I am not a special person. There's nothing magic about me. I used to read, like, no more magic than anybody else. I used to read about people that had these like kind of birth experiences that were not painful. I'm doing like inverted commas, because I wouldn't describe it as painful. And I used to listen to people, and I think that can't be true. And I've had 3 babies, so I've experienced like 3 very straightforward and safe births. So I'm very lucky. I don't ever forget about that. And the first one was painful. It was really painful and really, really hard work. And this one was powerful. It was just huge. It felt big.
Powerful. Wow.
It just felt big and almost bigger than me, but not quite. It was huge. And I used to read about people that had these speedy births, like solo delivery, and I used to think, imagine, wish I could do that. And that's why I need you to know, I need everyone to know that there's nothing special. It just happened that way. And I would attribute a lot of that to the fact that I was unobserved, and the fact that I'd had 2 healthy births before, so I knew a little bit about what the feelings were. It was a low risk pregnancy. There are lots of factors in my favor, but that.
And it sounds to me like, in that not being observed, you were allowed to really follow, because I was having a visual of you following the flow, following the body's cues, leaning in, squatting, moving. And I, in my own birth story, I really desperately, and I had complications all through my pregnancy with placenta previa, constant placental abruptions. It was a pain in the ass, and I never felt so potent and beautiful and amazing and all of these things, even when having all these long-term stays in hospital. But I was adamant to have an actual birth and not a C-section. Luckily, my placenta moved, but they wouldn't let me move. They wouldn't let me, never would have had a home birth, never would have had a birth center birth, had to go into hospital and have the labor and the birth. But they wouldn't let me move. And I was saying, I need to walk. I can feel I need to get up. And they had me strapped onto the monitor, and that was it. So I love that you had that experience, because the body knows what to do.
Yeah, it really, really does. And I loved being in the water with the other two, because you can sorry, my dog just came in.
Oh,
To join us. It's really lovely to roll about like a fish.
yeah.
And you're so heavy when you're pregnant, aren't you, that it's lovely to have that kind of weightlessness in the water. So
Are
I
you
had
Pisces
really wanted to
too,
pull.
Hannah? Are you a Pisces? Are you a Pisces?
No, I'm not a Pisces, but I'm
Aries.
Cancer rising. Yeah, I'm Aries with Cancer rising. My chart's a lot of fire and water.
Yeah.
I loved that. And I didn't think I was worried about giving birth on dry land, not one by the time I'd gone into labor, but that's why I wanted a pool at home. And it was just, it was exactly that. I went so inward. I would love to see a video, because it was so intuitive. And it was such a gift to me to be so present in my body and to be able to just do make any noise. And I remember singing. I have a great playlist. It's called Now That's What I Call Labor Volume 2. My second labor playlist. So I listened to that. And oh my God. And then I had this baby, and I just met him, and he was so perfect, so round and beautiful. And I just looked at him, and I was like, you did so well. You did so well. It was just so great. Then the paramedics arrived, and they were lovely, but it kind of interrupted the flow a little bit, and I ended up going to hospital to get an injection for the placenta to come out, and because the paramedics didn't cut the cord, so I waddled out of my house with a baby attached to me and got into an ambulance. Never been in an ambulance before, and it was so quiet in the hospital. Well, it was busy, but there were no midwives because it was COVID. So I was there for hours, and then we just drove home, and I remember the moon was so full. It was not quite full moon, but it was a big moon in the sky. And I felt like I am still so in love with that whole day and that experience. I felt like about 3 days after the birth, I felt like, and I know you are going to come down from the hormones, but I felt like, when you've been to the best festival and you come back and you're like, oh, I'm just not there anymore. I felt like I'd had the love of my life had left me. Do you know what I mean? I felt like I'd experienced the greatest love, and I could never go back there. I remember just being really sad and thinking, not fully sad, a beautiful sad, but thinking that's the peak. Nothing will ever match that. And then that just means that it's downhill from it.
And I wonder how much of that was because you actually had full sovereignty over your body in that moment. And that is the ultimate, in a time where none of us had sovereignty, actually. We were having all of our powers and our freedoms taken from us. We were being told where we could walk, where we couldn't, how many people we could see, what distance we must keep between us, and a complete disconnection. And then in this moment, you were so connected, your family, this unit, your power, your potency, and full control, until again it was interrupted. And
I love that reflection. I really love that, that juxtaposition of those two things. Yeah, you're so right. And that was the most embodied I've ever been in my whole life. And then especially in that moment, like you say, when we had none of that, and no one could touch me, and that is a lot of that is down to the people that help protect my space as well, just by being in the house. And so I'm really grateful to my 3 boys for doing that. But yeah, it was huge. And I think because I did something that I never thought I could do, I have a narrative of a confident person, and I said this to someone else the other day, I will, in the way socially, go in and speaking to people, trying new things, but I also have a narrative that I'm not brave, which is not true. It's not correct. But I have this somewhere,
the sort of script running.
There's a script somewhere, and I correct it when it comes up. But I remember when I said I wanted to have my first baby without any pain relief, people it wasn't, no one said, oh, you can't do it. People were sort of surprised. And then I thought, oh, will I be all right? And I once abseiled down a landmark building in our town, and I'm not a jumping out of plane sort of person. Do you know what I mean? And to be able to do that thing that I used to read about, and I never thought that would be me, really flipped my identity and my perception of myself. I thought whoa, and this. And then, yeah, that was really the starting point, I think, of like a new chapter. Although it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like I woke up the next day and was like, right, this is me now. But that's what,
yeah,
yeah,
it was the beginning of Hannah 2.0, right? It was like
where it was needed. And I locked my hair a month after that, a month and a day after that was when I first got my hair locked.
And that in itself, culturally, in terms of the potency of literally having power locked into your hair, it's the heritage of, yeah, dreadlocks. And oh, I absolutely love that. Yeah. Wow. So you locked your hair, and tell us, where did things unravel from there? What happened next in terms of your personal journey, the people around you?
Yeah, it was strange, wasn't it? Because not much could really, nothing could change fast. I mean, I'm sure it did for some people, but there wasn't a lot of quick movement in COVID, wasn't it? Because everything was very unpredictable and it was kind of slow and stop-starty, wasn't it, for a while? So obviously I was on maternity leave and the world had stopped. So I just had a lot of time to just, yeah, really absorb and integrate that experience. Telling that story again and again just really cemented like you're capable of so much more than you realize. And anything can happen. I think that was what it was.
Yeah, and I love that you've touched on that, because part of telling the story is such an important part of our integration, of our learning. And I've seen that in myself. The more I've taken things that maybe I might have been shamed out of sharing, or there've been things where I've thought, oh, that's, in the past, let it go. Like, you should be moving on now. But then actually, as we share the story, we unpack it. Sometimes we get a reflection that gives us a different perspective. We can right size things. We might actually get to see that it's really important and powerful and we're underplaying it. And just you sharing your story, what an inspiration for a start, but also what a beautiful way for you to actually position and make sense of that and draw everything. That it really was medicine, wasn't it, that whole experience, and you start drawing that medicine from it. And I'm guessing this is what started to reshape you into journeying into new ways of healing yourself.
Yeah, exactly because I think I've always been like quite aware, and prior to, in the year, so from 2013 to 2015, is that right? I lost a very close relative every January or February.
Wow.
So I had like 3 years of death and a birth of Oscar, my eldest, and then 2 years later my middle, and then like Rafi's birth, which was obviously just the wild ride that I just told you about. So that was like, that had like triggered a lot in me, but none of it was ever brand new. Like from a child, probably like you, I reckon there's always been a part of me that's just interested and called to reflect and journey and just connect with like other stuff. That's always been there, and you can kind of dismiss it, can't you? It's like, oh, kids go through like a hippie phase.
It's just my imagination. No, you're totally a little witch, as I call it now. I was always a little witch. Yeah,
it was. And like just called to nature and to understand like the world around me and things in different ways. So it was like building on what was already there, but that was the moment that I think it started to integrate. It was such a defining moment. I think it allowed me to like take ownership of stuff and just do things, just to do stuff and do something different. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was the end, it was probably in 2021. That was when I retrained as a hypnotherapist. That was when I started my training. It's like, because I had experienced hypnotherapy before. I'd done like self-hypnosis for birth preparation for especially my eldest. Never saw anybody. I just like listened to things and prepared. And actually I had unknowingly like been using self-hypnosis for like many years before to get myself through tricky things and get myself to do brave stuff. And then I did have, like, I was seen by a hypnotherapist for a phobia that I developed of flying, like out of the blue. After I had my first child, I just got really, really scared of getting on planes. I would have nightmares for weeks, wouldn't sleep. I would still get on the plane. It would just be horrible.
Lots of intrusive thoughts, or
intrusive thoughts, like extreme safety seeking is what I'd call it. The way I deal with a worry, if it really won't go away, is to like go down that road and then think, do my best to safeguard against the feared outcome, and then stop and leave it alone. If you try to Google how to look after a baby in a plane crash, you will not find anything helpful for yourself and any fears you might be experiencing. So I wouldn't recommend that. And it's not very likely that you're going to be in that situation, but that's where I wound up. And I just fed myself loads of unhelpful information. And I think we lived through a period of time where there were a lot of terrorist attacks. There were a few plane disasters. And I would binge consume rolling news, because for me, when there's like a mass tragedy, I get this thing where I need to know everyone's name and see everyone's face.
Interesting.
I have had to sort of quieten that down, but I feel like this need to like respect,
humanize
and respect. And yeah, you get that thing, there's a word for it. We were watching a program the other day, me and my partner, and it was about a city. And do you ever get that thing where it's all the people in all the different places living all the different lives and thinking all the thoughts? I just feel like this web of people, and the scale of consciousness and existence loves and
between us all.
That I feel that anyway. And then so when people have died, they mustn't be a number. There must be a face in a person with a life. I don't need to know everything, but I need to like absorb a bit. So I had absorbed all of this tragedy like over the years, and I think my dad died in a really sudden accident as well, which I think that was a little, guess what, really bad stuff can happen out of the blue. Even though it didn't make me a big worrier, but I think it manifested itself in the fear of flying.
And we were being fed a lot of fear. The narrative from the media was really feeding our fear en masse as a method of control. So all of us were falling prey to that at some point within that period of time. From March 2020 onwards, there was a huge, and there continues to be, but it was amped up. It felt like a massive social experiment to me.
It did. And it was interesting because my hypnotherapy teacher had like what would be described as controversial views. Like
I probably hold some of the similar ones.
Really enjoyable. I will if I need to stay on the fence, I'll stay on the fence until I'm happy about what side I want to go in. Like if I'm pulled to a side, I'll go there, and then if I need to change, I will. But if I'm not sure, I will wait, and I will understand as much as I can and listen to everybody. But she was really vocal, and it was really interesting actually. But the thing is, with hypnotherapy, with hypnosis, a lot of the power is in the words and the language and what that lights up in us. So for her, she was just like, every week we'd go back and she would say, like, just point out the mass hypnosis that was happening.
Amazing. What an ally in a time of absolutely needing it.
Really see that, she would just say, like, look at these trigger words that are being used at the moment in the media. Look, every time they say this is what it's doing. So I went through that process, and I did like two steps of training with the hypnotherapy. And my hypnotherapy teacher is quite clinical, I suppose, not clinical in the medical sense, but very practical. She's not what you might expect from a hypnotherapy teacher. She's like looks like a businesswoman. I'm just going to plug in my charger.
Sure.
She does.
Like a businesswoman. I love that.
She does, and she treats a lot of people, and that really helps people that might not be so open to hypnotherapy. Many of her clients come from those worlds, so she will treat people who might not. I think she kind of, she's been doing it for ages, and she's really good. But the way that she works is probably really different to the way that I work, and that's fine, isn't it? That's a teacher.
Sometimes we need that, right? We need that contrast in our mentor, our teacher. We need something different.
Yeah, exactly. So I trained with her, and then it's kind of a blur, the years from like 2020 to 22, I think, or even to 2023. It's quite a blur, isn't it? Like it was just post-pandemic, and there were like little trailer bits of lockdowns here and there. And I just started to sort of use that. Mainly a lot of the things that I learned in hypnotherapy, I used on myself. And then I will use I use them to help my kids relax, and using bits of language here and there just to think about how I communicate with myself and the meaning in my words and the power of words. And then I gradually started to see clients as well on the side. And when I trained as a hypnotherapist, I was working in mental health, but for a different company. I was working for an online children's mental health charity. So we didn't get to use it so much then, but when I started working for the charity where I work now, which is called Home Start, Home Start Portsmouth, but they're a national organisation called Home Start UK, and then there are lots of local Home Starts. And I work directly with families there, so I don't hypnotize people at work, but I can really listen to the language that people use and think about the language that I use in order to like connect people with their own power and to reflect back to people the way that they might describe themselves or their situation and suggest like a different way that might empower them to do things in the way that they want to do. And for me, hypnosis and hypnotherapy is like, so it's an unregulated industry. There are official courses you can do, there are bodies you can become a member of that have certain standards, and there's obviously best practice, but anyone can read a book and say they're a hypnotherapist, and there's risk with that, isn't there? But I also like the fact, because I've worked in quite clinical settings a lot over the years, and it's brilliant, but it's limiting if you're not able to go and get a specific qualification. If you don't have the means or the time to go to university, you're limited as to where you can go. And what I love with hypnotherapy, like I'm a respectable practitioner and I use all my other knowledge to make sure the work that I do is something I'm really proud of and it feels safe and helpful. But there are lots of different ways you can go with it. And for me, the way that I work is, what I love is that any healing, any progress, any achievement belongs entirely to the client, to the person I'm working with. It's not, I haven't done anything to you. You haven't come here and I've told you something. I might be things to you because we do have a little chat. Like I tend to use a bit of coaching in the beginning of my sessions if appropriate, but I never tell you anything. It's all you. People come and they sit in my room, and actually for the most part they sit in silence with their eyes closed. Someone said to me yesterday, "Do you know you're really, really good at this, don't you?" And I was like, I actually don't know that. Like, I hope so. And I try to be good, but you get no feedback because people just sat there like this. I don't even watch people, like, unless I need to see any particular movement, if I'm asking questions and I need them to move a finger. So it's all going on. I just hold space and facilitate. And I love what that means for people. It's not about me at all. And whatever you achieve, that's yours forever. You've done that and you can keep. And that's really important.
And in a way, what you're doing, so there's a few things I want to vibe off of there, because you're talking about the power of words, right? You're talking about the repetition of words. You're talking about the words that we use when describing ourselves. And actually, for me, words are spells. So we're constantly casting. I'm having a deja vu, but I'm pretty sure I said something about this to somebody at some point today or yesterday or maybe online. But words are spells, and the words that we use, they have severe impact. And that can be let's use some middle of the road words, positive or negative way. But they have impact. And so making people aware of that is the start, right? It's like, actually, the things that we say, I have to catch myself out all the time where I'll say, oh, I'm useless, or I'm always this. And I think I'm not always this. I've just made an error. Myself and Alexis were speaking the other day, and we were unpacking something around race, and I was talking about, the shame that I carry, and I was fully projecting onto others this question that really I need to ask myself about why I think I don't belong in this kind of, in the Black enough community. And Alexis was really astute at helping me to see nobody is going to answer that question, because really you're the one who needs to answer that question for yourself, so it's all about looking at the words we're using, why we're using them in that way. So I loved that. And also I really love what you're saying about facilitation. Effectively is what you're doing in this charity setting, weaving in all of your different magic and in a way that's safe, and empowering the other person to take care of themselves. What you're doing is you're creating a sacred space for that person to be able to drop in and commune with themselves, right? That's all we need. We're so busy. And I imagine the families you're working with Home Start, they're under pressure. How often does an individual in that kind of survival mode have the opportunity to sit, close their eyes, and go internally and gaze and ask themselves questions with, and you're prompting them in the right direction. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's a few things off of that.
Mm.
What remind me to tell you about book that I want to talk about in a
A
second.
book.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. Yeah.
What I want to say about the families that I work with,
Mm.
they are busy. The thing about the systems in this country currently is that the more disadvantage you're experiencing, the more hoops you have to jump through and the harder and more stressful your life is. So I shared something very briefly the other day actually on Instagram about a family in one of my groups, and they're really, really struggling. Their housing is awful.
Mm.
Really, like, and they've got a little kid, preschooler. You wouldn't want to have a kid in that building. They're not there out of choice. And there are like medical appointments that they've got to attend. Child's just been asked to leave their childcare setting because of their behavior. The behavior is made worse because of the housing situation.
Yeah.
And this person has to work a certain amount of hours in order to qualify for their universal credit. Because they haven't got childcare, they're not going to be able to work unless they find another job very quickly. Unless they find some other childcare very quickly, but the child's due to start school. There's like all of these complicating factors. So they have to fill in forms, so many forms. Schools for like their extra educational needs, for like with their health visitor, all these people who are helping them and stuff, but then also like all the benefits. The amount of appointments and forms that this person listed off in our group. Like when I had my second kid, I missed their childhood immunizations appointment 4 times. I felt so bad. I tried so hard to get there because I, wanted that for my child at that time. And I couldn't get there because I was too busy and I had too much on. And I am a person with financial means in a secure relationship with a partner who parents equally. I've got a lot of privilege. And I found it difficult to make that one appointment for one of my children. And the amount that these people have to do, and they're struggling so much, and so many of their problems are exacerbated by stress. Anyways, so she was describing all this stuff, and someone was like, "Oh, are you going to vote this week? Because it's not fair. You shouldn't have, you should have a voice in this because you're some of the people who are affected." And she said, I'm not registered. Because when the form came through the post, it was like with all the other, oh, your council tax is going up. Oh, like your child left their nursery. All these letters that are far more about those base level needs. They haven't got time to do that. So I get they are busy. They are extremely busy. They're busier than everyone else. It is harder for them than everyone else. And all the families that I work with are trying so hard. And I don't know many people who would cast judgment on those families, but you hear things, don't you? And anyone who might think for a second that people who are in need of support are lazy, I would love more than anything for you to swap shoes and to try and do all of the things that they've got to do, because we couldn't. And it's just unbelievable. So these people, like my families, are really busy. They've got so much on. And the other thing, which is a more lovely thing to talk about, is that I have this really, really strong belief that everyone has a right to do things in their own way, as long as they're not causing harm.
Yes.
So when the work I do with parents, like I've got access to information that they may or may not have had access to, and I hope that I can present it in a way that makes sense to them and is manageable. But I'm not any sort of expert on them or their lives, and they are the best person with the right information and the right support. They are the best person to parent their child, and however they want to raise their family, however they want to do things, whatever they want to do, that is perfect, as long as it's safe and people are cared for and they have their needs met. And that means everybody in the family, especially the children. So it is about creating space, and it is about people doing it in their own way, their own culture. Like families might come up with an idea that I think that's absolutely nuts. I would never want to do that. But that's yours. That belongs to you. No one has the right to tell you, unless it's a question of safety.
Yes.
And we have families that have, like different levels of sort of understanding, different levels of mental capacity, learning needs, or we work with such a wide range of families. We work with like families with a lot of privilege and families with not many resources at all. There's no discrimination. It's not like you have to be a certain type of needy. You just got some things are hard at the minute, which they often are when we're raising kids, and we need some help. So that's what we're here for. So and I love people doing things there. I learn from my families all the time, and it's theirs. It belongs to them. It's not about like coming in and rescuing and telling you how to do it. And I've got this great idea that doesn't work, and it's not useful, and it's not empowering. And that diversity and richness, that's magic, isn't it?
So magic. Yeah. Oh, and then you said something about a book.
Oh, yeah, you were talking about words, and it was making me think about a book, which maybe you read, and it's called The Four Agreements. Have you ever read it?
I've got it. Yeah, it was gifted it. Never read it fully, but touched the first part of it.
Yeah. I've read it.
First one, don't take things personally, right?
Yeah, don't take things personally. And one of the other agreements is be impeccable with your word. And it's
Yeah.
about how your word is your power. That really, I've reread that book quite a few times. But when I read that particular chapter, that particular section about be impeccable with your word, it was long before I'd ever come across hypnotherapy or
Mm.
hypnosis. That really blew my mind. That was probably, I was quite young, and that was probably the first time that I thought about the stories that we tell ourselves, what our words do, and about saying what you mean, using your words in a way that's like authentic
Mm.
and has integrity.
Yes.
So it's not about like, oh, I need to be a perfect person, or I need to do things better so that I can talk about them. It's about being honest and kind. To me, that's how I read it.
Beautiful. That's exactly how I would say. I think the root of authenticity, the root of integrity
Hmm.
are really honesty. And that's honesty with self, honesty with others. Yeah.
Say what it is.
And love is
What
love,
it
lead with love, but ultimately honesty is the thing that will keep everything in integrity and authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah. Name the stuff.
Yeah.
Say the stuff. Say what you mean. And that's a skill and a practice, isn't it? And I
Yeah.
love correcting myself when I put something out in the world and I'm like, oh, hang on, no. What I mean is actually, or
Yeah.
else really, I'm such a messy person. Sorry, no, actually, I'm really trying to be more organized, or like, like even sometimes I might come to a meeting and say, I'm sorry, I'm late. And then I'll be like, actually, I'm not, because one of my kids really needed me. That's why I'm late.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sorry. That.
Yeah, I think we touched it on it briefly before we started the call, right? Which was talking about wanting to appear to have everything together in a certain way, and then actually understanding that that would have been a compromise and not enabled you to be fully showing up in the way you want to for your family. So
Yeah.
actually, it's always a value judgment. It's what's more important in this moment, and that for you, by the sounds of it, is always going to be your family versus a tidy house, yeah, or whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe there'll be space for both one day, but it's
Mm.
acknowledging that it's a choice, isn't it? It's
You have
acknowledging.
three
Oh,
children under what age?
my eldest is 9.
You have three children under 9. It's way forgivable for you not to have a tidy house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's not doing the house there. No, it's not that bad. It's just got a lot of stuff in it, It's
Yeah,
fine.
it's
It's like
busy. Yeah.
it's the tidiest house we've ever lived in. When we were like student sort of era and we didn't have kids, it
Yeah.
was probably messier. It's just that kids come with a lot of stuff
Yeah, they
in
do.
in our society. They don't need to, but they do, and it's really hard to get out of that, I think.
You have
And then
lots of different needs, Hannah, as well. You have the 9-year-old, and then, sorry, I don't know, your son in the
9,
middle.
6, and 3, almost
Oh,
4.
wow, that's huge range of different diverse needs, requirements, equipments. There's so much going on there. And then there's you, and then there's your partner, and probably other family members that visit, and all of these things. So yeah.
I think it's like it's a real point for me, because I would like now a clearer space. Like, I don't want to get rid of all my stuff, but I think I would really benefit mentally from a bit less stuff and a bit more space. And I've struggled, like wrestled with that is probably the right way to. And I do have bouts of like, oh, I just want it all gone, and it's a mountain, isn't it? Because stuff, and I've had a lot of people that died, so you inherit stuff, and that's even harder to part with. But when I'm on a good day, I'm at peace with it. And I think, and I would say this about anything that I would hope to be different in my life, is that I acknowledge where I am now, why, and I accept that I would like it to change at some point,
Yeah.
and when it's important enough, and when there's more like mental space, then that will happen. It's like not pretending that I don't care, and not beating myself up for the fact that it's like that, but
Yeah.
just like, yeah, this is like this, and it's not ideal.
Yeah.
And then there's great stuff as well that I'm
Sounds like
really.
there's very little override, very little masking, a lot of authenticity, a lot of self-honesty, and a lot of compassion in that approach.
That's the thing, is self-compassion that underpins everything that I do. And I'm obsessed with the science of self-compassion. Obsessed. Like, we know it's a thing, right? And I learned about it when I was working for the online mental health platform. There's a lot of clinical psychologists on the team, and they were all trained in this school of, it's called compassion focused therapy, and it's about the 3 human emotional systems, and they're described in 3 circles. And there's our drive system, and I love it because it's science and neuroscience, and it matches with everything that I had such a click moment for it, because so much of what I feel and believe is not very tangible in the more clinical spaces where I've worked. And I know it and I live it and I work it, and that's fine. But I always felt like there was an element of fluffiness that would make me feel like I wouldn't be credible if I tried to explain it properly, because it is essentially like everyone's doing their best, be honest and kind, like a lot of that kind of stuff. Anyway, when I learned about this compassion focused therapy, so you've got your 3 systems. You've got your drive system, which is seeking resources. So it's like on a mission, like driving, dancing, exercising, like shopping, anything where you're getting resources, and it's about dopamine. So it's like going for stuff and getting it done. It's like quite a vibey system,
action orientated, right?
Yeah. And then you have your threat system, which is like fight or flight, adrenaline, cortisol, and it's about safety seeking. So that's about fighting or getting away from a threat. And a lot of the threats that we experience now are internal. Like the majority of things that send us into fight or flight, into that threat system, are feared social consequence usually. So when you're running late, it's not being late that's stressing you out. It's what's going to happen as a result of being late.
What's going to happen, internally, or how you're judging yourself for being late, right?
Judgment on yourself, judgment from other people, judgment on your kids if you're running late for school, all of these things that are not real physical threats. It's just, and there's probably not actually anything bad at the end of any of those threat roads, but this narrative, isn't it, in our heads? And then the third system is our soothe system, which is all marked by like oxytocin, and that one is all about connection with ourselves through things like meditation and like self-touch. Like I love that you can like massage your upper arms for like 20-30 seconds and stimulate your oxytocin. I know none of this will be new to you. Or connection with nature, connection with other people. It's that it's a state of complete contentment, and it is not wanting or needing anything, just being. And this soothe system is not only like a rest from the drive and the threat, because obviously we live mainly in drive and threat in our life. We're getting stuff done, or we're worried about not getting stuff done, like essentially between those two. And the soothe we don't make a lot of time for. But it's not only a rest from those, it's actually also protective. So like that oxytocin will protect you against some, it will repair some of the damage that can be done by the cortisol and like by prolonged exposure to cortisol and adrenaline. And when I had it explained to me like that, I was like, I know this, and I just couldn't, like, I was so happy that some clever person had thought about it and put it in a book in a way that everyone can access it, and that we could bring it into our practice. And I teach everybody about it, and I love to teach people that whatever is going on for you, if the only thing you can do is with your cup of tea, when you've made your tea and it's just cooled down a little bit and it's warm, if you can sit for 30 seconds and absorb the heat into your hands and let it just like work its way all through your body, if you can do that 30 seconds, you would have given yourself like a shot of that powerful oxytocin that is going to maybe just be the difference between sinking or swimming that day. If all you can do is find those little moments, like look up through the leaves of the trees, and that is not going to fix the bigger problems. No amount of self-care will fix a broken system. It is not your fault. It shouldn't be this hard, but you've got this one little tool that can move the needle for you. It gives me goosebumps. Everyone should have access to that. Everyone should have access to that information and that power, because that's yours forever. Wherever you go, you've got your breath, you've got your touch. And I think I talk about being like an inclusive well-being specialist. That's like what a lot of the
well-being specialists. That really sums you up really well, actually, Hannah. Yeah.
Should have at the beginning, shouldn't I? When we were thinking
of trademark it.
Yeah. Well, because like I said to you, Claire, I work across a lot of different spaces. I work with people with a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
And I work with people who are really disadvantaged. And I think that now we are really gifted with the fact that we're so aware of mental health, of physical and spiritual well-being and how much of an impact that has and how these things are really interconnected with our physical health. However, I do feel like that world sometimes is and sometimes just comes across as exclusive for people that have got the money, the time, the body, the physical capacity, the entry into those spaces to be able to like do wellness. And we know it's not just about that, but you do need the information and you do need the confidence and the permission to begin that, don't you? Largely, unless you're really someone that come with that kind of pre-installed, which some people do. But I thought, many of us don't. And I think I love to connect people with ideas and ways of like moving about the world and talking to themselves that they might not have had or wherever they are. I just think we need to integrate. And likewise, like I said as well, there is so much that like the parents that I work with, the families that I work with, the communities that I see, there's a lot that people that haven't experienced that kind of hardship could learn as well about resilience, about the power of community.
Love that. Absolutely. So you can see the cross-pollination from those who may be perceived to be less than from some of these parts of society, actually having something to offer and to teach the haves. Talk to us more about that. I'm so excited by that.
Yeah. Well, I feel really lucky to just know lots of different people, I think. I used to teach. I used to teach English as a foreign language. And I used to teach classes of students from all over the world. And beginner classes wouldn't have any of the same language in common. And if someone and even now when I say that to people, they're like, yeah, but how do you talk to them? Like none of them could speak English and none of them could speak each other's language. And I was like 23, like rock up, like, okay. And what I learned from that, what I absorbed to my very core, or what was reconfirmed for me, I don't know, is that whatever we think is different about us, we have got more in common. And it's such like a cliche, isn't it? But we are like so connected, and it takes very little for people to connect and spark and find something in common with each other and find some nourishment from and some learning, at the very least learning. Absolutely. And creating that space with people who apparently had nothing in common, who might have never met or seen someone from the country that person next to them was sat next to. You know, and we used to work with people from from the Middle East who'd never been to Europe. We'd work with people from European countries who had never seen a brown person, and everything in between. A really wide range of people. What they had in common was that they all had the means to be there. So there's always something, isn't it, that brings people together. But that really taught me that it doesn't matter what you think those differences are, there's always something to learn from each other. And I just feel really privileged to have those connections with globally, which I still do a bit of work in that space. And then again, in the communities that I work in, I grew up here where I work. So, I went to school with these are just my people. And I just, it's that phrase, isn't it? There, but by the grace of God go I. No one's any different. No one's different. It's circumstance.
Totally.
You get the same diversity of people, the same richness and contrast and conflict and struggle and beauty wherever you go. Doesn't make any difference. No difference whatsoever. It's just circumstance that lands us where we are. I think that's what the learning is. And I think you have to, I don't hold prejudice is just a mental shortcut, right? It's not, especially things like unconscious bias. I don't hold any judgment to people for having unconscious bias. That's not your fault. That's just your brain doing its job. It's not useful, and we're in a world where we don't need that anymore, but it's not your fault, and that's not a bad thing. But we have to acknowledge, and we do it all the time. You make quick judgments because we haven't got time to know everybody. We would explode. But when you see someone and you think you think you know their story, they're the same as you. They're not any different.
Yes.
And that's just, so of course they've got things to teach us. Of course we can learn from that, because they've had parts of their rich personality have been switched on and pulled out from their circumstance, which we will all have those same different aspects, but we haven't ever had to draw on that strength because of the privilege that we've been gifted with. So that's why there's stuff to learn. And it's it's there's no difference.
We're all so connected. I just totally love what you were saying, because so many things came through, and I'm thinking about the last piece you were talking about, the interconnectivity and the indiscrimination really of whether we land up in a certain situation or not. And what really came to mind for me was my journey through recovery and 12-step fellowships, and how that really put me in a position of understanding how it's just one decision or one thing that happens that can render you homeless. It's just one thing that might happen, even not a decision of your own, that you find yourself in a situation where you end up maybe homeless, maybe using drugs, maybe using alcohol. And that it's indiscriminate, addiction, for instance, is indiscriminate. And that for me was a real leveler of understanding, I've met surgeons, high profile lawyers, famous people, people just like me, working class from, regular towns all over. And there's such a great leveler that happens in the recovery kind of network that I'm a part of and have been a part of for so long. And that for me is really beautiful. And I absolutely love when you were talking about, and this is not to diminish their adulthood and their, the obviously accomplished individuals that have enabled themselves to go into a place of learning and willingness to learn another language. But what came to mind was thinking about the often times that I've had the privilege of taking my daughter on holiday. And she would strike up a friendship with another child who had absolutely no command of, say, English. She has no command of the Spanish language, but they would have the most intimate, connected, loving bond for the entire time that they were.
They want to be around each other. There's chemistry beyond words.
And they were communicating without words.
They play. Yeah, beautiful. I love that.
And it made me think, I wonder how much actually, so I'm going off on one now, this is the Pisces coming through, right? Made me wonder how much really of that, when you take away language, because we can hide behind language. So we were talking, words are powerful, but also we can hide behind our intellect, we can hide behind our words. And when you have that class, as you said, with everybody not really having a common language, we go back to basics. We're actually starting to work with energy. We're starting to work with a whole different transmission, which is the commonality of we're all here for the same thing. We're all just a bit scared. And then what frequency do we want to work with in order to all get to know one another? And I think that's almost childlike, baby-like, right? Back to basics. Yeah, those were the things.
Really malleable to learn a language. You have to really, you've got to go back in a way. And the classroom, every classroom will have a different energy. Teachers talk about it in different ways, but the teacher, there's a chemistry and it's unique, like a little fingerprint every time. And that's kind of created amongst the class. In the school that I worked at, we would have new students every Monday. So it's always evolving, really interesting. It's such an incredible field to work in. I learned so much of what I know is from there.
Cultures, and a constant morphing and changing team as well will be a real dynamic to handle as somebody who's leading the class, because as we all know, teams go through stages, don't they, of forming, norming, storming and performing, and every time you add in a new person, the dynamic goes back to the beginning, and yet you're still building on the previous dynamic. So what an interesting thing to hold.
Oh, I loved it. I really loved it. And it's about creating safety, because you've got to learn. It's really scary to learn. You have to be really vulnerable, especially with language, because you've got to make sounds that you've never made before. You've got to practice and practice and practice and get it wrong and have it reflected back to you like, oh, you can do it like this. Like, it's really vulnerable space. And we would have people who were CEOs, like generals in the army. Like university lecturers, and we'd have 18-year-olds who were students, like leaving home for the first time. You're all in the same level. So you would really challenges your perception of who you are as a member of that class. And as a teacher, you've got to create that mutual respect and that safety and that motivation and that joy, I think, to get people to learn. So that is the most transferable skill, to hold that kind of space.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, I'm kind of curious in terms of, I can see this journey you've been on, these awakenings you've had, how you've woven them into the things that you're doing at work. But what's, in terms of where you're at right now and your own how you're being of service to yourself. You've talked about the endorphins and like the lovely oxytocin that comes from our prolonged hugs and the warm cup of tea and all of these beautiful practices. But what's lighting you up personally in terms of your own journey right now? What are you dipping into?
For me, it is this like radical self-acceptance and like deep compassion. Like that is that's where it's at for me, and that it links with everything that I do, but that's what underpins it, and that's the thing that I'm practicing myself. That's the thing that I'm really living. And what I love about that is, like, I'm all about, like, I'll describe myself as like a proud imperfectionist. Do you know what I mean? And I'm here for like messy progress. When people like, and it's social media is part of it, isn't it? But it's all, it existed beyond that. But people go like through journeys of, whether it's a business journey or an academic learning journey or a self-healing journey or a fitness journey, and they seem to like disappear, and then it's like stars in their eyes. They just come out like, tonight, Matthew, and I'm now this. And we don't see, really, we might see like a nice like polished version of like, a little montage of like, oh, in like 30 seconds, like, it was this and then it was this. But we don't really see the struggle. We don't really see, not much, not enough. It's a novelty when we do see, oh my God, like, because people often, before they're successful, don't want to share that they're trying to be successful in whatever it is they're trying to be successful, in case they don't make it. Do you know what I mean? So like for me, there's a lot of accepting, like, yeah, I do want to do this. Like, for example, like speaking, I'm really enjoying like speaking in front of audiences. That's something, but it took me a really long time to name that I wanted to do it, because what if people know I'm trying? But if people don't know you're trying, they don't offer you anything. Do you know what I mean? And so naming it, that's given me gifts and dividends. And it's also enabled me to use my words and say, I would like to do this, or I'm working towards this, And one of the things that I think I wrote down, because I do a lot of writing, not regularly, it's not I just do it as I'm called to do it. Like, I work with my energy very much. If I do something when I'm energetically called to do it, it will be easier, more efficient, more effective, always. Like, rather than like I'm not someone that does things
Following
like this.
your creative urges almost.
Exactly. So sometimes if I'm a bit stuck, I like to do, it's got a name, hasn't it? I just write myself a letter from the future. And I usually start with like, if I've got a problem, I'm in a pickle and I don't know what to do, I'll write, everything's worked out perfectly, and then I'll just flow with like writing how things are in this imagined future, and then I'll understand the pieces of how I need to get there. But I'm all about like this messy progress, this like learning out loud, and this like complete self-acceptance of all the good and all the struggles. And not, like I said about, for example, about having a really tidy house or something, just accepting there are things that you might want to be different, but just being totally at peace with them being the way they are now is not groundbreaking enough. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't really fall into a particular category, but that has been so transformational for me. That is what enables me to keep going. That's what enables me to not throw myself headfirst into something that I think is going to have a particular outcome. And I still do it by accident sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is a good idea because it's it's going to pay well, or this is a good idea because I can get there quickly, or this is a good idea because it sounds good, or this is a good idea because my mum might be really proud of me if I did. These are all different reasons over the course of my life that I might have chosen something, and they might be really quiet subconscious reasons. But knowing and accepting like what I want and who I am, that enables me to really know what I want, and to keep kind of trudging towards there. And sometimes it's a little jog, sometimes it's like a downhill water slide, and other times it's like an upward hill slog through mud. But knowing, like, fully accepting that that's what I want and that's who I am and this is where I am now. I don't know, it's just huge. That for me is huge. It enables me to keep going in a way that makes sense for me, that's not linear, that's not perfect, that's not sometimes even sensible. Just that acceptance.
Love it. And I love what you spoke of, that practice of why not, like, projecting into the future that you've already succeeded and you've worked towards the thing and it's been a successful outcome, and how that does give us the building blocks into the pathway. And actually for me, a lot of that is just doing the next thing, not worrying too much about the end goal, but actually doing the next right thing or the next thing that will lead you there. And I love what you touched on, because last October I started studying psychotherapy,
Yes.
and I was stroked massively into that. So it was in transactional analysis, and
Mm.
yeah, I was flattered that basically the lead of that educational setting had reached out to me and said, I think you'd be really amazing. And I'd already showed interest in doing the course. And yeah, I signed up and I started within 2 days, the course was starting. So I didn't ride my usual emotional wave. And it was really interesting because I absolutely had so many awakenings and realized how I'd been so traumatized in my educational setting as a child. And it was a major breakthrough coming to terms with that. And I had all of these beautiful epiphanies like, oh, you've been letting this 15-year-old traumatized kid tell you that you're really thick and that you aren't clever for so long. And actually, quite to the contrary, you're really smart and
Yeah.
you can really eloquently communicate, and people really understand when you break things down for them. And I was having all these beautiful reflections in the group work. And what is also true is I had an experience there that didn't really, it just compounded my inability to learn in that setting for a period of time. And for me, it felt like there was not really an ability to come back for that at this
Yeah.
time. And it showed me that I don't want to be a psychotherapist.
Yes. Oh, isn't that nice that you can shut that bar?
It showed me that actually I want to be in the body. I don't want to be in the head.
Yeah.
And there was a huge part of me staying because other people wanted me to be there. And that showed me my pattern of doing things because other people want me to, or that I feel I'm responsible for the happiness of other people, versus doing what's right for me. And when I really leant into it, and I had a little bit of distance and I really leant into it, and I realized this is not what I desire. And it doesn't make me a failure.
No,
It's
no, not
amazing.
at all.
Yeah, there's a win in there, there's a learning in there, and I've taken what was needed, and others have been able to take something from me, and that's the mutual, lovely dynamic, and that's enough,
It
you know.
is. It's exactly what it was supposed to be, and
Yes.
it gave you exactly what it needed to give you, and it ended in exactly what this resonates so much with me. And this is really nice because this is like when I had to reflect on what was the sort of moment, what was the kind of catalyst, what was that time, and I said about Buffy's birth, and the evidence that I have about the before and after are things like this. So something I'm a serial starter. I love like the beginning bit of learning something or doing. I'm a honeymooner. I love that first bit, the dopamine. Like it's so fun and exciting. Like I love learning languages. I love being a beginner in any. I've got like I can speak a lot of languages up to like very basic level. Anywhere I go, I'm like I've got to learn that. And I have had quite a lot of jobs over the years because I just, like I said, I go where my energy takes me. And I'm really lucky that I've been able to get different jobs. And I've never felt like, oh, if I lose this job, I can't get another job. I've not been really in that headspace. And that's just luck, really. That's just luck. That's just luck. Um, but I have, especially since having kids. So before I had kids, I worked in the language school where I started teaching. I started there out of uni. And I stayed there doing different roles, social program, looking after students' well-being, working with the principal, doing marketing, where I got to travel to like South America and like promote the school. Really cool, interesting work. And then when I had my first kid, I was going to go back and I didn't. And from that, so from 2015 onwards, I just had loads of jobs, loads. The charity where I work now, I started back there in October of last year, but I'd been there already in 2016. That was my second job after I had my first child. Yeah, I had a job after I had Oscar at college. Oh, it was horrible. That was one of the worst. And my dad died during that time. And it was at the beginning of the half term. It was an FE college. And so I'd had a week's bereavement leave, whatever you call it, compassionate leave, and then it'd been half term. And then I came back and I remember saying like, oh, who's covered my classes? And we were teaching a lot of people that part of it was a different group of people to the group that I'd worked with prior to having kids. It was they were here for well, migrant people really who had come over here because they had to, and some of their ability to stay in the UK depended on their language. So it was a lot more invested in it than people that had come over here.
As well, right?
Yeah. Anyway, no one had covered my class. There wasn't any cover. They just didn't have cover. So I just felt I can't take any more time. If I'm having a bad day and I think I can't come in because I'm sad because my dad just died in like a shock accident, I can't not be here. And I felt so unsupported and so like out on a limb. And then I left that job and went and worked at Homestart, which was just the most healing, wonderful place to work. Really incredible people. Incredible. Yeah, a lot of people who've worked there have gone through like big life changes because of the safety and the nourishment of that team. And yeah, and then I worked there for a year, and then I had my next child, and then I got offered a job back at a different language school that paid better, that meant I didn't have to work so many hours. And I was like, I'm going to do that because I want to be with my kids more. And I was sad to leave the charity because they're great, but I wanted to, I made a financial decision. And then I was traveling a lot and I didn't want to travel so much. And I did something else. And then I got that really good job just before I found out I was pregnant with my third child. You know, that was an opportunity. That was a postgraduate diploma in like CBT informed. So that was the chance for me to get that educational piece around the kind of healing and mental health work like that we do. And I think that was my desire for something like credible and like credible, you know, like a bit of paper that said,
certificate,
do this. And then I did that, and then I was going to go back to that, but I kind of knew I wasn't going to go back to that because I didn't want to do that with a newborn. I didn't want to study and work full time and try and raise 3 kids. And I used to apologize. I used to think, like I knew why I'd made all the decisions, but outwardly I'd think I need to explain to people like, oh, I'm not a quitter. Like I'm just, you know, I would have stayed longer, and I would like make myself stay longer than I needed to. But then I just, after Rafi and a little while after him, again, I had like 2 or 3 jobs after I had him. I just stopped saying sorry. I just thought I've made all these decisions for all these really
all the appropriate reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that responsibility piece and letting people down. But also, how can you do the best for people if you're not fully there anymore? Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Staying in something for the sake of pleasing others or because you feel obligated to do so will only lead to resentment, right?
Leads to resentment. It leads to damage to yourself. And for me, it's easy with kids because you think, what am I bringing home?
Yes.
What is left of me to come home? And then also someone else could have that space.
Yeah, we invite others into step into their power. When I also always think this, like, it's great to be humbled, so you know, to remove ourselves from a space and realize it survives without us. Because I was like really parentified as a child. It's kind of grown this like element of over responsibility for things that aren't mine, and like misplaced responsibility, I call it, and therefore I carry that with me as an adult. I have to keep it in check, and sometimes I'll see it's there and I'll think, oh, I can't leave, what if, you know, and then I notice actually everything's fine. No, it didn't, everything didn't fall to pieces, it's fine, you know.
And if it did fall to pieces, then that system's got a bit of a problem. If all of their entire ability to survive rests on one human, it's a systemic issue.
Totally.
But it takes a lot, doesn't it? It takes a lot.
Oh, so much. And I love that because each of these has been a stepstone to building, you know, you as the individual you are and all of the magic that you offer, right? Including every little step and decision we made, even as children, I believe. And even for me, as choosing the parents that we wanted before we even entered this dimension, you know, our little souls were floating around and we were like, I know I need these life lessons, I'll choose those parents, you know, and off we popped into the little human fetus and we're here, you know. So yeah. Oh, so much. I would love to talk a little bit as we start to wrap up about how people can work with you now, how they could connect with you, how they could work with you, what you have on offer, and all of those things, all of those yummy things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I mean, I am, how can I put this nicely? I have a very full life. And I'm really,
in there.
Yeah, and actually, I'm really selective actually now about how many people I work with at any one time because it's such important energetic work. And I've had times when I have perhaps over booked myself, and it's such a privilege to hold space for people and to sit with them, that I only ever want to come at that with an energy of joy and excitement. So I work with people individually. I just have a little bit of a waiting list sometimes, and I might pause it throughout the year, but that is purely so that I can be of the best service, because
Beautiful.
energy is precious, isn't it? So I work with like hypnotherapy clients. I work online and face to face. I have a little clinic that I work out of here in Portsmouth, and it's really effective online as well, hypnotherapy. Some people
Yes.
actually prefer it because they like to be in their own space.
Yes.
And there are benefits to that as well. And it's really flexible, which is nice to be able to do it, from anywhere. So I work with people, tend to work in 3 blocks of 3 sessions, because I find that is a really nice contained way to work, but we can work like beyond that as well. And we do a lot of inner child work, a lot of visualization, and I help people with loads of things, but help people a lot with phobias, getting over something where they've been stuck, and like reconnecting with their inner self-compassion, and helping people do things they thought they couldn't do. Those are some of like my favorite areas to work. But I do a lot of things, and I'll always meet people for like a little chat before we start to see if it's a good fit. And also, if you've just got something that you're stuck on, I will always listen and offer advice or guidance, and I'll always direct people to free resources as well. If you go on my Instagram page, I have 2. I have one that's like specifically parenting content.
What are your Instagram handles? And then we can also type them.
The parenting content is 30_%_parent, all in words. And then my other main page is Hannah Jardine Youell, all together with no space. And in my main page, I share lots of things around self-compassion. They're usually like little things that you can kind of integrate. I want it to be like bite-sized. I could do this today and feel a bit better, or it might be a little different way of looking at something. So that's all always free. And I also do like talks and training for organizations and groups around inclusive well-being and creating cultures of belonging, those kind of things. I really love that work as well. So lots of different ways. And I'm looking at in September, or probably towards the beginning of the winter, when my youngest is fully in school, I'll be looking at maybe some group offerings as well that will be for people who are kind of on a similar journey, where we can meet and hold space and do a bit of work together that way as well. So watch this space, follow me on Instagram, reach out if ever you want to have a chat, and if you're interested in working together, I'll always find a way to make it work.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll make sure obviously everything's tagged and linked so people can find you. And if anybody struggles to get in connection, like, feel free to reach out to me and I'll make sure you're pointed in the right direction. And I'm curious as well. You've touched on lots of different things, and I like to end with a couple of questions. And one of them is around individuals who are embarking upon their journey of healing. Are there any reflections, any words of wisdom that you'd like to offer to, or if they were to ask you, where do I begin, or like, what do you think, how do I do this? What are your reflections for those individuals?
The first thing that came to my mind when you said that, there is no like right or wrong way to do it. And that's something people like chuck about all the time. But I felt like on the outskirts of the kind of healing world for a while, especially when I had very young children. I felt like it's so important for me to do this work now. I feel so in touch with what I need to do, but the how do I make mental and physical space to do this stuff? I don't know when my children are going to be awake or asleep. I can't plan it in. And I just used to feel a little bit, maybe like resentment, frustration, when I kind of dip my toe into whatever bit of learning it was. I think I can't, I'm too busy, I'm too stressed. And what I want to say is that it doesn't matter what you do or how often you do it, as long as it works for you. So if all you can do is like listen to a podcast, or like put on a meditation as you go to sleep, or write in your journal once in 6 months, or if you're someone that needs a regular practice and that kind of routine and rhythm and ritual is really, really good for you, and everything in between It doesn't matter. What matters is that you can do it and that you get something out of it, even if you're only able to do it once, because you might do it again in a year. And when you look back over the many years, that frequency might increase. What matters is that it's yours and that it's accessible to you. So please don't ever think that you have to pay for it, that there's a right way to do it, that only certain people can do it. And if you're stuck, send me a message and I will voice note you, because everybody can get started. We all deserve to know ourselves. And I just don't ever want anyone to think that that's not for me, because you know, you're with yourself from the beginning to the end, and you deserve to know each other, and you deserve to be friends. So that would be like my main bit of advice. It's a bit like vague, but
it's very compassionate as well. It's that theme of compassion, right? It's just be kind to yourself, and
whatever you're doing is okay.
Yeah.
You know, like whatever you're doing is okay. And all the time we're beating ourselves up for not doing enough, we are hindering our journey. So yeah, just be at peace with where you are and do what you can when you can. And if you can't do anything, just by being kind to yourself about the fact that you can't do anything, that is really
doing something, right? Yeah, beautiful. And for those who might want to move into a place of holding space for others, of facilitating for others.
Yeah. Well, I think we do this all the time anyway, don't we? And I think for me, like, I never realized, and I've actually reflected on it more in this conversation, like that teaching job really cemented me as a person. I really felt in the right place at the right time. And it's very much a job about holding space, like creating space for many, you know, that for many people to be in. And I love that. I think, yeah, I really, really loved that work. I loved that work of teaching, anything where you get to share, really. And I love to be like, I don't know, you're a bit invisible, aren't you, when you're holding space for someone? And I kind of like that. You're like fully present. You're almost stepping in to the other people for whom you're holding space. So I really love that. And yeah, I just think take any opportunity that you can to quieten down and tap into the energy that's around you. And if people want to get into something like hypnotherapy, I love it. Even if I never used it in a kind of business sense, I don't really like that, but if I hadn't used it as sort of in exchange for like financial remuneration, it would still be extremely useful to me in the way that I communicate with myself, the way that I think about things, and the way that I speak to others when I speak on stage, when I speak to my kids. And yeah, it's really, really taught me a lot. And you can just go buy a book about it, or you can watch some videos. Like, there is no right way. Like, you know, if you're going to go out and see people, like, please do it safely and properly. But if you just want to learn about it and get some benefits, you can do that for free. There's so much free stuff out there. You know, anything that you pay to learn, you can learn for free. You might not get the certificate and you might not be able to like go out and practice it. But if you just want the knowledge and the information, then that's yours, and you can go grab it. So yeah, I would really urge anyone to look into that more. And yeah, definitely read that book, The 4 Agreements.
Yes, you've made me want to pick it up again, and I can see it's up on my bookshelf, so I'm going to grab it in a minute and go back to it. Thank you so much, Hannah. It's been such a pleasure. Is it do you feel complete? I mean, I could literally go on for hours and hours with you, but it's just been so beautiful.
It's been beautiful, and we haven't even talked about death, but so we'll have to do a follow-up.
Oh, we absolutely need to do a follow-up. Yeah, that feels like maybe it's not. Yeah, we'll come back for that. Part 2.
Yeah, it's not a quickie. We'll be here for another time.
It's not. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Claire. It's like been a joy to connect with you from the moment that I met you. And yeah, this is just a really, really lovely thing to be part of. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks.